Madam Chair, we have the YouTube stream going, so whenever you would like.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to, I guess, our first ever board orientation of the collection of budget committees for Washington County. Or Tanya or Jack will correct me if maybe it's just the Washington County and Service District for Lighting Committee. Service District Lighting Number 1 Committee, long name. I'm Chair Catherine Harrington. We're joined by Commission colleagues, Jerry Willie, Pam Treese, Roy Rogers, and our newest Commissioner, Nafisa Fai. I'm delighted that you're here tonight. So I'm going to turn it right over to our County Administrator, Tanya Angie.
Thank you, Chair Harrington, and it's great to be with you all this evening. I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce myself. My name's Tanya Angie, and I'm your new County Administrator. I don't know if I can, how long can I continue to say new? But from a budget standpoint, this is my first budget here in Washington County. I joined the county in August of last year, and continued to be humbled to serve Washington County and have enjoyed working with the staff across the entire agency, as well as in partnership with Jack Leong to continue to move the proposed budget to a document that you can all review. So we do have a packed agenda before us tonight, and I feel that any financial discussion with Jack Leong is always packed with great information for us to absorb. And so what we're going to kick off is just introductions of the group that's with us tonight. And on the next slide, please, you'll see what will be the questions we'll be going through. So I will take the opportunity to answer question 5. So my favorite ice cream flavor, and this is the season when I start craving ice cream even more, is dark chocolate almond coconut, which is really challenging to find. And so I haven't had the chance to buy it locally. So if any of you have tips on where I could find that, please let me know. So Jack, I'll turn it over to you to help facilitate introductions.
Thank you very much, Tanya. If we can go back one slide, please. Before we facilitate introductions, I just wanted to quickly go over the agenda that we have for tonight. And I just want to remind everyone that according to Oregon Revised Statutes, that this is an orientation meeting rather than a formal budget committee meeting. So we are not here to discuss the fiscal year 21-22 budget, not quite yet, as we're still finalizing the proposed budget, but rather than we're providing a platform for the budget committee members to get to know each other as a team, and then also to provide an orientation to new budget committee members on the process of the budget and what to look out for in the next couple of weeks, where you will be working together as a committee, as 3 separate committees, actually. So that's tonight's purpose. And with that in mind, we have a 4-part agenda. And the first part is the budget committee member introductions, as Tanya mentioned, and then we'll roll into the budget committee roles and responsibilities. And then the third part of the agenda is the Washington County budget process and structural overview. We will use some information from last year's budget as examples to go over the Washington County's budget structure. And then we will discuss a little bit about next steps, what happens in the next couple of weeks up to a month of the budget committee process. So welcome. And thank you for joining us tonight. Next slide, please. And as Tanya was mentioning, that we have a couple of questions to kind of go over for everyone that's on the budget committee to chime in and then introduce yourself to your colleagues on the committee. And then we will start with name, and then if you're a commissioner on the Board of County Commissioners or a part of the community member that's participating in the committee, or which. And the third question is which budget committee you're serving on. We do have a collection of 3 separate budget committees tonight that's all going through the orientation together. And then number 4 is how long have you served on the budget committee, whether if you're a new member that's new this year, or if you have been serving on the committee for some years. And then the last one is obviously an icebreaker, is what is your favorite ice cream flavor? So, and then I will, I have figured out, virtual meeting, the best way to not forget anybody is to go with the attendees list and then from top to bottom. And oftentimes it's ordered alphabetically. Looks like Zoom is slightly off, but we'll go with the list. So I will call out names from the attendee list. And then if you're called, please chime in and unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the committee. And really, besides these 5 questions, anything else you would like to share about your aspirations and your vision for the committee's work, feel free to take the opportunity to share with the rest of the group. So the first one that's appearing in my list over here is Karen Bolling.
Hello. So I was a committee, I'm Karen Bolin, I live in Hillsborough. I was a committee member in the past, took a little break, and now I'm back. I liked it so much, I came back for more. And so I'm a community member on the budget committee. I don't know which one I'm on, to be honest.
You're on the main Washington County and
yes.
Service District for Lighting.
Service District Lighting, okay. And my favorite ice cream flavor is Rocky Road.
All right. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
And the next one that's on the attendees list I'm seeing is Raymond Eck.
Yes, Raymond Eck. I'm a member of CPO 6. I was with Commissioner Scouten, and now I have a new young lady as a new commissioner from my particular group. I've been on the budget commission for the last year. I can't give the exact name of the budget at the moment. I can't think of it either, Jack. You got me off guard on the whole thing.
Yeah, and Raymond, you are on the ESPD and you are MD of the committee.
Right, I got you. And my favorite ice cream is any kind of berry.
All right, thank you, Raymond. And then the next one that's in the list is Anthony Mills.
Thank you, Jack. I'm on the ESPD ERMD Budget Committee. I've been on for 5 years. I've also been on the THPRD Budget Committee for about 8 years formerly, and also the Soil and Water Conservation District. So I've been on a number of budget committees over the years. I will have to say that I'm on the Planning Commission and we have a meeting at 6:30 tonight. So if this meeting runs past then, I might have to leave and join the Planning Commission for the county. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. And the next one is Cesar Maldonado.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cesar, and I'm a community member, and I'm on the Washington County Budget Committee, and I'm new. And my favorite ice cream is pistachio.
Thank you, Cesar. And the next one that's in my list is, sorry, my apologies, navigating the Zoom attendees list. And it does change around a little bit on my view over here. And the next one is Chair Harrington that's in the list.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Catherine Harrington. I'm the at-large elected chair of the Washington County Board of Commissioners. So that's answers number 1 and 2. So I've been on the county's budget committee set since I was sworn in January of 2019. Prior to that, I was an elected Metro councilor for 12 years. So the council was the budget committee at Metro, and we worked with TSCC, the Tax Supervisory Conservation and something other commission, which reviews all budgets for public agencies in Multnomah County. So this will be my 3rd budget year going through the Washington County committee process, and I learned something new every year. My favorite ice cream flavor, well, the one that Tanya Angie listed out sounds so delicious, but I'm with Karen. Rocky Road is my favorite.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. And the next one that's in my list is Daniel Reed.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you all can see me. I'm on my phone here. Yeah, I'm Dan Reed. I'm a community member on the North Bethany Community Service District for Roads. A little bit of a mouthful. And I've been on that committee for I think about 4 years or so now. My favorite ice cream flavor depends on the season, but today I'm going to say mango. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan.
Good to be here.
Thank you, Dan. And next one is Daniel Hauser.
Hello, everyone. Daniel Hauser. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a community member serving on the ERMD ESPD Budget Committee. I've only been serving on that committee since, I think, 2019. It feels longer, and I don't know what that means, but I'll leave that out there. And my companion, who just left me after tearing most of the things off my desk, is my son Ogden, who will likely rejoin us at a later date during this meeting, depending on how well we can cage him away from the meeting. And my favorite ice cream flavor, a slight deviation, I would use my favorite Blizzard, is cotton candy. It sounds slightly offensive, but it's just so good, and strong recommendation.
Thank you, Daniel. And the next one on the list is Fuhua Xu.
Hi, everyone. My name is Fuhua Xu. I'm a community member and for the North Bethany Road Budget Committee. I'm new members. For the favorite ice cream, I think vanilla, because it will be easy to find and it's difficult to make really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Fuhua. And then going down the list, next we have Commissioner Willie.
Well, good evening. Jerry Willie, County Commissioner for District 4. I've been on every budget committee since January of 2019 when I was sworn in. Prior to that, I was the mayor of Hillsborough for 8 years. And so I am very familiar with budget committee activity. My favorite ice cream is a blend of Rocky Road and chocolate chip mint.
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. And then still navigating the list in Zoom. And the next one we have, I believe, is Melissa Laird.
Hey everybody, it's Melissa Laird. I am a community member serving on the ESPD URMD Budget Committee, and I've been serving for a year. And my favorite ice cream is the same as Fuhua. It's vanilla, but my reason is because the best use of ice cream is to be on top of a piece of pie. And vanilla makes it perfect.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. And then next we have a Commissioner Fai.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Nafisa Fai, Commissioner for District 1. Nice to meet you, Raymond. This is my first budget as a county commissioner, and I will be on the budget committee that Jerry and Chair Harrington will be on. So this will be my first time being on this Washington County Budget Committee as a county commissioner. But before that, I am a founding member for Multnomah County Health Department's Budget Committee. And my favorite ice cream is Cherry Garcia.
Wow. Thank you, Commissioner Fai. And then next we have a Commissioner Treese.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Pam Trace. I'm Commissioner for District 2. Happy to be here. And like the Chair and Commissioner Willie, this is my third year, and I keep learning more and more about the budgeting process, which in turn is obviously the foundation and helps me learn more and more about the county. So I appreciate all of the work that we do on the budgets. My favorite ice cream, I make a very mean strawberry ice cream from scratch at home. So that's kind of my favorite thing to do.
Wow, thank you, Commissioner Trees. And then next we have Commissioner Rogers.
Get off mute there for a minute. Can you hear me? I was having technical problems the other night. Jack, am I on?
Yeah,
Good.
we can hear you.
Yeah, my IT guy, I'm at home right now instead of the office. My name is Roy Rogers. I'm a commissioner from District 3, which is in the southeast quadrant of the county. This is my 37th budget at the county, a lot of years. I can't say 37 for all of our special service districts because a lot of them were formed after I became a commissioner, but I share in common, I think, all of the budget committees with everyone. I was mayor of Tualatin 7 years before I came out to the county. So I've seen a lot of budgets. For a living, I'm a CPA and actually have some expertise, our firm in budget matters, and probably see about 200, a little over 200 budgets from local governments in any given year. My favorite ice cream would be, much like Ray said, anything berry. I do have a preference for strawberry, Pam, but probably as a true Oregonian born and raised, it would be huckleberry. That's probably my favorite.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. And then next we have Stephen Robert. Oh, my apologies. Our colleague is Stephen Roberts. Stephen Barron.
No better. We work together. No, I'm just
Yes,
teasing.
previous colleague versus current colleague. My apologies, Stephen.
All right. I am a community member in District 1. I am on the Sheriff's ESPD committee, and this is my second year. I've been in accounting and finance for the city of Portland for several years, so I've done a few budget trainings, but you can always learn more. Budget law in Oregon is crazy, and it's very complicated. So anything you can provide us, Jack, is great. And I'm going to go with Rocky Road as well. So I think that's three or four votes now for Rocky Road.
It's definitely in the lead. Thank you, Stephen. And I noticed that while we were going through the list, Jennifer Burkhart has joined us. Jennifer, we are just doing introductions based on the 5 questions that's currently showing on the slides. Do you want to jump in and do a self-intro to the rest of the committee?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jennifer Burkhart. I do not have actually which committee I am on this time around. Is it the same one I was on last time? Well,
Yes,
anyways, this is my,
Yep.
go for it.
You are on the County and the Service District for Lighting #1 committee.
Perfect, thank you. This is my second going on the second time serving on this committee. I am currently the principal financial analyst for PPB. And procurement supervisor, and my favorite ice cream is, I'll be boring, is vanilla. Just I don't like a whole bunch of stuff in my ice cream. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yep.
I think that it's a list. Please let me know if I missed anybody, but I believe I have caught everyone that's in the attendees list. And for my own self-introduction, I believe I have met everybody, but just to reiterate, my name is Jack Liang. I'm the Washington County Chief Financial Officer, and I am at your service in the next couple of months, especially, always at your service, but especially in the next couple of months for everyone together to go through Washington County's budget process. So I am very happy to be facilitating this meeting this evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And with that, we will get started with the rest of our agenda.
Oh, but wait, Jack, I didn't catch your favorite ice cream.
Oh, my apologies. My favorite ice cream, actually, it came from a Q&A session, intro session, almost like this. And I think it was during my City of Portland days, one of the colleagues introduced sea salt caramel as a new flavor that I haven't tried before. And then I have been a big fan ever since. And then in addition to that, I got my wife on that too. So every time we have a sea salt caramel in the house, the two of us will have to fight over it every time.
Well, that means we have a 3-way tie. We have 3 votes for Rocky Road, 3 involving berries, and 3 for vanilla.
So
So there
all
you
very
go.
popular flavors. Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully everyone have their hit list for the summer ice cream sampler going forward. Thank you, Chair Harrington, for that reminder. And we'll go to the next segment of our agenda tonight. And the next part is Budget Committee roles and responsibilities. So along with tonight's presentation, I also forwarded a documentation that is actually produced by the Oregon Department of Revenue. And they actually conduct annual training to mostly folks like me and folks that's in my team to conduct essentially the Oregon budget law training. And that takes us through the Oregon revised statutes and then give us all the in and outs of the legal boundaries that we need to navigate into. Next slide, please. So to start off with that, hopefully everyone had a chance to glance through that document, but really at a high level, a couple key pieces to include here is the Oregon budget law, specifically Oregon revised statute 294.305 through 565. Those are the specific sections that is commonly referred as an Oregon local budget law, and that governs all the local jurisdictions' budget process. And the purpose of that part, it obviously has a lot of verbiage that's in it, but the two big purposes is to establish standard procedures for preparing, presenting, and administering the budget, and then also requires community involvement and public disclosure in budget preparation and adoption. Next slide, please. So what is a budget committee? And if you have glanced through the document, the more detailed document I sent, I pulled out a couple key pieces from there, and just to repeat here so we can go over together. The budget committee is the district's fiscal planning advisory committee. The committee consists of the elected governing body, which is our Board of County Commissioners, and an equal number of qualified district voters appointed by the governing body, which are our community members. And for each one of the Washington County Budget Committee, we have 3 budget committees. For each one, we have the 5 Board of Commissioners that sit on it, plus 5 community members, which makes a 10-person committee for each one of them. And then what is the budget committee's main function? So the wording from Department of Revenue specifically says, in a series of public meetings, the budget committee meets to review, discuss, make additions or deletions, and approve the proposed budget presented by the local government's budget officer. And by the way, for Washington County, the charter basically establishes the county administrator as a budget officer. So when you see the proposed budget being transmitted to you, when we have it ready, it is actually, in our language, it's called the county administrator's proposed budget. And then, oh, sorry, got my little guy popping up in the video right here. And it's called the county, my apologies, it's called the county administrator's proposed budget. And that is up for the budget committees to review. Apologies for the brief interruption there. And upon completion of its deliberation, the committee approves the budget. I had to, sorry, my apologies. I have to call for emergency help to keep my son under control.
Jack, I just have to say that it's great. And from our viewpoint, it looks like he appears out of the sky because it looks like it's magic. So this is one of the best budget meetings I've been in.
Oh, I am going to Home Depot and getting a lock for my office door right after this meeting. Upon completion of its deliberation, the committee approves the budget and sets the tax rate or amount needed to balance the budget. So that is the main function of the budget committee. Next slide, please. So next, we're going to go over the Washington County's budget process. Well, before we go into the next segment, I want to pause and see if there's any questions or comments really quick from the committee members. All right, thank you. Thank you for that endorsement. That means I did a good job to do the first round of orientation for the budget committee members. when they are getting recruited. So the next part is the budget process. And the next slide, please. And the Washington Community, so the budget process starts with the Washington County's mission. And the Washington County's mission is to provide excellent and cost-effective services that support healthy, peaceful, safe, and sustainable communities, and encourage meaningful participation in community activities and county governance. That is documented in the county's 2020 plan. And just a little extra information is that in the next couple of years, the county will go through a brand new strategic planning process to establish the county's mission, value, and goals. So that's something that we at the county all feel very excited about and look forward to. Next slide, please. So what guides our budget process? We have previously mentioned about the Oregon budget law, which is the ORS specifically requirements for the budget. But in addition to that, we also have the county charter and codes that specifically establish the expectations for the county's budget. And then we also have a board of county commissioner priorities and the directions as a guiding post for us to develop the budget and then get it to a proposed budget format for the budget committee's review. Next slide, please. So to get a little more into the details of the budget, the county's budget is at a high level, it's organized into functional areas. And then we have the operating functional areas that's broken down into 5 different categories. And the 5 different categories is illustrated in this chart that we're showing right here. We have the general government, public safety and justice, land use and transportation, housing, health and human services, as well as culture, education, and recreation. So these are the 5 operating functional areas. Next slide, please. In addition to the operating functional areas, we also have a couple non-operating functional areas. That includes capital, which is mostly consists of transportation, facilities, and information technology capital. And then we also have non-operating, which includes all the insurance funds, the debt service funds, and some other miscellaneous funds that is not in operating nature. And then we also have non-departmental, which covers the community network, as well as the general funds contingency, which sits in that general functional area. So if you have taken a look at Washington County's adopted budget summary, which I have forwarded to all the committee members, you can see that at a high level, this is the general breakdown of the county's budget into different groups. Of course, within each one of this group, there are smaller organizational units that illustrate different sets of budget in each one of these areas. And next slide, please. So in addition to the functional areas, the county also organizes the budget in a fund structure, and that is required by ORS. So what is a fund? In really layman's term, it's almost like checkbooks, different checkbooks that's tracking different expenditures and revenues that comes in. It is a legal segregation of the county's resources and expenditures. Once the budget is set into certain funds, they cannot move across funds without board action. So that is a legal segregation as well. And it's basically like separate accounts or checkbooks that for us to keep track of a different kind of expenditures. And then currently the county has 82 funds in total. Next slide, please. And then the county's fund is broken down into general fund and the special funds. So the general fund is a catch-all fund that accounts for all of the county's discretionary resources and associated expenditures. That is one of the larger funds that's within the county, which is really accounting for the property tax that we collect, a lot of the discretionary revenues that we collect, and then all the discretionary services that we provide. And the special funds usually have very special uses. So whenever that you see a fund number that is not 100, by the way, the fund number 100 in the county represents the general fund. So everything else that carries a fund number that's different from 100 is a special fund. And those are used to segregate dedicated resources and associated expenditures to a special purpose. Examples like that is maybe we get a special grant from the state to work on certain behavioral health type of work, and then that is categorized into a special fund. Or if we charge certain fees, like the gas tax that is supposed to be dedicated to road projects, and then that is categorized into a special fund. So all of those special funds has a very dedicated revenue source, as well as a very dedicated purpose for its existence. Next slide, please. Now let's talk a little bit about the timeline. So go way back to the beginning of this fiscal year, which is the July of 2020, using this year as an example. The first quarter of our fiscal year is really the preparation stage. We start building project plans and timelines, and the financial forecast gets updated starting from that time to inform the later on budget development process. So you can really consider the first 3 months is the county's preparation time to get the budget process started. Next slide, please. And then going into the second fiscal quarter, which is October through December 2020, and then we have the priority setting time where the county has hosted in November a community investment conversations, actually multiple sections. And then that is a great opportunity for the public to provide input and to the county about what the community needs are. As the county continue to center community needs as part of our prioritization process, our investment process, these are areas where the county commissioners and county staff hear from the community about what are the investment priorities that the community are reflecting. And then we also use that time to gather board directions, county administrative office directions, as well as have a departmental communications about what departments are hearing from the various advisory committees, what the departments are hearing from our customer base on the county's priorities. And then also within that quarter, we have the preliminary budget development, which is each department will submit their capital requests in their capital project needs, and then we'll have the departmental budget development instructions that goes out during that time. Next slide, please. By the way, I know I am going very fast in this process, so please feel free to interrupt me anytime if you have any questions. And I know that it's probably a little bit easier for our more veteran budget committee members, especially for the new members. Feel free to stop me anytime if you have any questions. And then going into the next quarter, which is January through March 2021, we have the budget development and review. This is where really the departments starting to work on their budget, work on their business plan, and really put the plan on paper. And the departments start to finalize their budget proposals, and then the county administrative office start to get very busy reviewing of the departmental budgets and ask questions, and then ensuring the alignment of the departmental requested budget is in alignment with the county's set priorities. And then the county administrative office also work on the proposed budget summary drafting. So this is where really all the numbers come together, the narratives start getting drafted, and really the budget document itself is starting to take form. Next slide, please. Okay, we're on to the next slide. And then into the last quarter, that's really where all the budget activities gets amplified. So starting in April 2021, that's where the budget committee orientation is happening, like what we're having today. And then we have the proposed budget summary finalized. We're actually in the process of finalizing that right now with a target of by the end of the month, we'll have a finalized document to get it to you. And then we also have the public budget committee meetings scheduled and announced. So following ORS, we have to follow this very, very specific public announcement process to give all public the notice that the Washington County is developing our budget and what are the date and the timeline for the public input opportunities. Next slide, please. So going into May, this is where the budget committee really come to life on this activities. We have a number of public budget committee meetings that is scheduled, and then we're currently working on the public announcement right now. So on May 12th, we have the budget committee meeting for North Bethany County Service District for Roads, the ESPD, which stands for Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, and URMD, which stands for Urban Road Maintenance District Budget Committee. And that is the budget transmittal meeting for the county administrator as a budget officer, my team as the county's finance team to transmit the proposed budget to the budget committees. And then we will have a presentation prepared to go over each functional area of the proposed budget. And then on May 13th, that is for the Washington County's main budget committee, as well as the service district for lighting #1 budget committee. And these are community info opportunities because these are the meetings that's designed for budget transmittal. So there is no public hearing or public input opportunity during these meetings. Rather than later on, we have public hearings on the fiscal year 2021-22 budget scheduled for May 26, 2021. And that is for all budget committees, one after another. We have all three staggered. And then that is the time where the budget committee hold the public hearing and then hear the public's testimonies in regards to the county's budget committee. I see a hand up from Karen. Go ahead.
So do we have a time on those?
Yes. So this committee starts at 5:30, and on the 12th, yes. So they all starts at 5:30, and then the North Bethany County Service District for roads starts at 5:30, and then finish in about an hour's time. That's where we start the ESPD and URMD at 6:30 on that night. And then the one that you're involved with, Karen, you're actually on the Washington County's main budget committee, which is May 13th. And that's the one that starts on 5:30 on May 13th. And then we'll conclude whenever we conclude on that night.
And then the public.
Jack, are those going to be on Zoom or in person again this year?
Good, very good question. We are planning to have all Zoom meetings this year, just following the public health guidance.
So Jack, I just need to be at the ESPD May 12th at 6:30.
No, Karen, you're on
13th, right?
It's an understandable confusion because for everybody's background, Karen was on the ESPD and URMD budget committee before her term on the main committee. So you are actually on the Washington County and SDO #1 committee now, Karen. So
Okay, so just go to the 13th.
Yeah, go on the 13th and then the 26th.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Very good question. Thank you, Karen. All right, sorry, I have you guys on my side screen over here, so I'm peeking just to see if anybody else have any questions. All
Jack.
right. Mm-hmm.
Hey, since we took a quick scheduling break, I just want to let folks know I also need to leave at 6:30. Meant to mention that at the onset to help run the Aloha Library board meeting. So apologies for that.
No problem. Thank you, Daniel. And we're making great progress with the agenda. So let's hope that we may not necessarily use up the whole time that is booked. So next slide, please. And then on June 15th, that is where the county's budget gets legalized, and then the tax levy gets legalized, which is where the Board of County Commissioners take action to adopt the fiscal year 2021-22 budget. And at this meeting, budget committee members' participation is not required because at this stage, this is the board action, but you're always welcome and encouraged actually to show up and be a part of that process. Next slide, please. So in addition to the formal budget adoption process that gets next year's budget set, the county also have budget adjustment processes. And this is just for everyone's information, is we have a fall budget adjustment, a spring budget adjustment, a year-end budget adjustment. And those are usually in October, February, and June respectively. And these are the time for the county to review our budget in case anything new that happened. And I have to say that throughout this last year during COVID, we have had more supplemental budget than we ever had as a county, just because that the situation changes almost on a daily basis. And then we have to pivot and be very flexible with the budget adjustments. And by ORS, usually this budget adjustments do not require budget committee involvement, but I always encourage budget committee members to pay attention and then tune in to some of these changes just to kind of have a really solid foundational background for next year's adoption as well. And then we also have certain special budget adjustments for time-sensitive items. For example, when we received the CARES Act CRF dollars, and then there is no time for us to wait 3 months to get the budget in place to get it in place. So we actually did some special budget adjustments to really be nimble and pivot quickly according to the need. Next slide, please. So we'll quickly go over the fiscal year 2021 budget at a high level. And this is really just meant to give everybody a quick preview and a little bit of refresher for existing budget committee members on what the budget presentation might look like. Next slide, please. So first and foremost, we like to cover the major themes that is within the county's proposed budget. When you receive the proposed budget, you will see that there is a major section close to the front of the budget that is called the budget message. And that essentially illustrates the major theme. So for last year's budget, we really had 3 themes. We have the continuity, which centers around COVID-19 response, the maintain county services during a pandemic, and then we have the caution to protect the ongoing support for vital services, which is obviously still ongoing. And then as a county, we are very proud to say that we were able to keep all vital services for the most part intact throughout the whole COVID pandemic. And then we also wanted to highlight the pre-pandemic priorities, which are diversity, equity, and inclusion, economic development, affordable housing, as well as transportation. Next slide, please. So starting with the total appropriation, because we definitely advertise the county's $1.5 billion budget all the time. And what that means is a combination of all of the budget added together among general fund, among special fund, among all the funds that's added together, both operating functional area, non-operating functional area, that adds up to be the total budget. So for fiscal year 2021, in comparison, you can see that our total budget actually went down just a little bit because of some of the cyclical changes in capital. And then it ended up with $1.48 billion. And then we also provide the FTE count. Our FTE count actually grew from a total county perspective to 2,252 FTEs. So we'll provide the similar kind of information during the budget transmittals this year. And then in the charts at the bottom, that's where we kind of break out the, on the left-hand side chart breaks out the revenue side, which is how much of the resources come from taxes, intergovernmental. Intergovernmental might be a new term for you. These are usually revenue that we receive from other governments. And the big part of that is really the grants revenue that we receive from the federal sources. That's grant revenue that we receive from the state sources. And then we have charges for services, operating transfers in. So all that categories that breaks out. And the one thing that to highlight is that we also have the beginning fund balance as a part of the resources that gets into next year's budget. And in the term of a balanced budget, that is where we put all resources on one side and then all expenditures on the other side. And in the end, we achieve that balance. The middle chart over here illustrates from a functional area perspective, how is our budget appropriation broken out. You can see from a percentage perspective, we have the general government, public safety, all of the operating and non-operating functional areas that is broken out into a percentage. And then of course we have the general fund. On the right-hand side, we have the general fund and special fund breakout. So our general fund is 22% of the total budget last year, and the special funds are 78% of the total budget. Next slide, please. So this is essentially the same information in a different view in a table format. It tells you how our total appropriation of that $1.48 billion is broken down into different functional areas as well as percentage. Next slide, please. And then it's very important to highlight general fund as part of the presentation, and then you will see a similar format in this year's budget transmittal. The reason for that is because general fund is really the main fund where the county's discretionary funding is at. And that really illustrates a lot of the county's decision priorities and investments. As mentioned previously, a lot of the special funds are very restrictive. They have a very specific dedicated revenue source, and they have a very specific defined use for those funds. So we can't it's not the county's decision to take money from, say, the gas tax and then use it for something that's different from its intended use by ORS. But general fund is really where some of this discretion comes in. And then this is where we also provide you information on the general fund. Last year, our general fund budget out of that 1.48 billion is 320 million of the county's budget. And again, on the left-hand side is the revenue breakdown between taxes. And then we also have a MISTIP and WCCLS. And the MISTIP stands for Major Street Transportation Improvement Program. And the WCCLS stands for Washington County Co-op Library Services. And those two also have very dedicated tax sources, which is a part of Washington County's general fund tax, but those are dedicated to those two services. And then we have departmental revenues and interfund and transfers that makes up the total picture of the revenue. In the middle chart, that's where our expenditures breaks down into different categories. You can see that about 50% is personnel services, and then we have material and services, operating transfers out, as well as other smaller categories in there. On the right-hand side is the functional area breakdown, where we have general government, public safety and justice, housing, health, and human services, non-operating, as well as some smaller investments. And a very common question that come up when people see this chart, and they're like, why are you investing so little in land use and transportation, cultural education and recreation, and then non-departmental? So from a general fund perspective, a lot of those bigger categories are traditionally general fund supported services, where a lot of those smaller categories actually do have a special fund funding sources that fits into those areas and then provide those services. That's why when you look at the county's total budget, you will see a much more balanced budget breakdown between all the functional areas. But when it comes to general fund, that balance goes away a little bit because of the specific purpose of the general fund services versus special fund services. Next slide, please. And then again, same information in a table format, the dollar amount, the percentage breakdown, and then the total for general fund appropriations. Next slide, please. So that is really covers using last year's example and covers a high level presentation. Obviously, when we get to the budget committee meetings, we'll have a lot more detailed discussion into each functional areas, and that covers a lot of those org units, as well as the total details will be in a 300+ page document that you will be receiving soon. That really is for your review at your leisure to dig more into the details of each org units. And then I want to give you the resource for the county's financial information, which is on our county's main page. And then on the left-hand panel, there is a navigation panel. And within the big list of the navigation panel, there is one item in there that's called financial information. And then if you click on that link, it will take you to our financial information, where the county's budget, the county's financial report, the county's cost plan, fee schedules, all of that budget information is on that web page. So feel free to go to that web page and dig in a little bit. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about next steps. I have covered a lot of information. What happens next as part of the budget committee? Next slide. So the next step is we are working very busy. My team is almost running around the clock right now to finalize the proposed budget and then really getting the publication of that book together. And our goal is to get the electronic version available to the budget committee members on April 28th. And then we are also printing copies for the budget committee members. And our goal is to get those ready on April 30th, with the hope to get it available earlier than April 30th. But April 30th is our hard deadline. And just for environmental reasons, we have had budget committee members that do not want to print a copy before. So I wanted to say that we will make printed copies by request to the community members at this email address that I'm providing here. That's finance_budget@co.washington.or.us. So please feel free to email this email address, or if you already have my email address saved, feel free to email me as well. I can relay the information if you would like to have a printed copy of the proposed budget. And then once you receive the proposed budget, either if you're reviewing the electronic format or the printed format, feel free to send any questions between when you receive and before or after the budget committee meeting. Feel free to send any questions to the finance_budget@co.washington.or.us email address. And again, you can always use my email address as a backup email address for that. Next slide, please. And then this is just another detailed view of all the budget committee meetings that is upcoming. So it answers Karen's question earlier about the timing of each meeting on each day, and then what to expect. And then we also have the budget adoption that's listed in there. Now, one thing that I wanted to mention is that at the Board of County Commissioners work session on May 4th, which is a Tuesday, and we also have a scheduled economic update that is scheduled for an external speaker to come in, which is the Eco Northwest, a very well-known and very established firm that gather and research economic data and provide assistance to local jurisdictions. We also have a portion that's scheduled to go over economic update at that meeting. If you have time to spare, I will highly encourage for our budget committee members to tune into that economic update. And that is at our regular board work session on May 4th. Next slide, please. Well, I guess that's to the end of my presentation. So I really want to extend my thanks to you. Like I said, I am at your service always, especially for the next 2 months. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or need any assistance throughout the budget process. So with that, I will ask Michael to take the presentation down, and then we're open for any discussion or any questions. I see Chair Harrington have her hands up. Go ahead, Chair Harrington.
I'll just start with a question, but I think the questions from the community members are more important. But in case we need a warm-up question, I was wondering, for those of you who have been involved with parts of the Washington County budget before, do you have any tips and tricks for how to approach our budget? I'm a continuous learner, so I love learning tips and tricks from other people. How should I approach the budget? What are your thoughts about how to go about doing that?
So I'll go. The one slide that you showed that has, I think it's 9 different main components. When you make the printed version, you have all those nice dividers. I think it's really helpful to go through the summary on each one of those dividers and kind of get the overview of each section, because one thing can be funded by multiple places. And I think that's where I got confused the very first time. And state money is spent a certain way, and federal money is spent a certain way, and county money is spent a certain way. So when you look at those overviews on those, if you get the printed version, the tab, I think that's very helpful to give you kind of a lay of the land. And then I think the staff does a really good job in the meeting with the presentations of explaining the detail. And our role as a budget committee isn't really to make changes, but just to understand. And I really feel like I'm an ambassador to the community to say, our county resources are spent very efficiently, and people have a lot of questions about that. So our budget committee role isn't really going to be to change line items, but really just understand why and where, and then be able to communicate that, to our friends and neighbors, so people feel like their resources are being well cared for. I think that's the job. So there's my comment.
I would perhaps add that just feel incredibly empowered to ask lots of questions of staff during the meetings, around the meetings. A lot of my background and my interest is not only on the budget side, but also on the tax side, and really understanding our tax base and who pays and why them, and how we can do better. And I had lots of questions around some of the data that was provided last time around that I think the staff were really great about getting, detailed, thoughtful responses back to me. So I think I would just encourage the, use of the resources that are provided, ask the questions, don't feel shy, and definitely feel empowered. Your role is to ask hard questions, right? And so I hope that that's, something that folks will bear in mind.
I'll jump in. I think the importance of being able to compare last year's adopted to this year's, proposed, and see what changes happened, and then, just being able to kind of see the progression from last time, and then it'll give you some more ways to be informed on asking questions this time about, what they did last year. So it always helps.
If I may chime in, I just wanted to say that Karen's pointer is one that's really excellent. Actually, I may borrow that in our future budget orientations, because our budget is really built almost like a tree. It starts from high level and it gets into more and more details. So those pages, as Karen was explaining, it's basically those first pages after each functional areas divider. That's a big summary of each org units that's included in that functional area, and then a high level appropriation at the total level. And then from that will give you a really good overview of that functional area. And then you can dig into the details of the each organizational unit that's behind that. So that's a really good pointer for reviewing the budget document. Thank you, Karen.
I have a quick observation before I have to leave, but I encourage everybody to read as much as they can, but you don't have to catch every little thing, because the great thing about having large budget committees is there's going to be somebody most likely that finds something that no one else saw. And so that, everybody working together really, gets down to, what needs to be discuss. But if you do have a question, it may be a question that other people have that they're too embarrassed to ask, or they assume that everyone else knows it. But go ahead and, ask, or, because whatever the explanation is going to be, it's going to educate the rest of us, so.
Thank you, Anthony. I see Daniel's hand is up, and I know Daniel needs to leave at a certain time. So Daniel, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. One of the questions that I think I've been paying, certainly as many folks have more attention to of late, is understanding explicitly what the impacts of our investments and our priorities are, and how they impact the distribution of resources and services for families of color in our community. And so I'm curious, with this budget, are there areas that that you expect will explicitly call out investments that have disproportionate benefits, either for white families or for families of color? Like, is there a racial equity analysis that is intended to be amended to, or an integral part of the budgeting process? Because I can imagine that many of the questions that we'll be asking will be around, who benefits, right? If we're spending $12 million investing in expanding sidewalks in this particular area, who lives there, right? Who's going to benefit from these investments? Are we targeting and prioritizing our resources in a way that ensures we're helping to break down barriers for families of color in our communities?
Jack, I can answer that question. Daniel, thank you for that question. And this year, the budget will not be broken down into that detail. The county, under our equity resolution, we have hired our first equity officer, Latricia Tillman, and Latricia is currently in the process of building out her team, and exactly what you are asking for, using an equity lens, not only on the budget, but weaving that into day-to-day operations, as well as bringing forward policy discussions to the board, is something that is a high priority on our work plan. So as you look at the budget and in budget committee discussions, I would encourage you to lift up those options for us to be looking at as we continue to build that into our budget process, and also just reporting out on outcomes outside of the budget process on where dollars have been spent to our community. So thanks for that question.
I think Ray has a question.
I mentioned this same sort of question last year, and it had to do with COVID and how the budget worked this year, having to do with whatever COVID has gone against the budget, against health services and whatnot, and what coming forward going into next year. What is the general thoughts that how bad has it affected the budget? Let's put it that way.
Thank you, Ray. I see Chair Harrington, your hand is up. So would you like to address this? Go ahead.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to respond to Ray about how COVID has influenced the current adopted budget first before I pose my question.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. So from an adopted budget perspective, I feel that Washington County is very fortunate to have received federal assistance this last year. So from budget impact, I want to say that we feel fortunate that we do not have to divert other critical county service resources to dedicate to COVID. Instead, we actually received quite a bit of a federal assistance, financial assistance, to build programs to get the dollars into community services. So obviously, we can dig into details and have an hour-long conversation. That still won't be enough. But from a general perspective, it did not negatively affect the budget too much for fiscal year 2021.
Yeah, I remember the comment from last year that you got the federal money, but I was more worried about coming forward, what has transpired. So
there's a whole new report with a great presentation that we just went over at our board meeting this past Tuesday. So I'm sure that we can follow up in an email for you, Ray, and the whole committee to point that out. So my question, Jack, was if we go to the website and look at the current adopted, the current budget year, fiscal year 2021, we see that there are 3 documents listed under proposed budget, and then adopted budget has a 4th, so it includes a dashboard. So with us about to receive a proposed budget, will we receive the budget summary, the org unit detail, and program detail all at once, or what?
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Very excellent question. Usually by default, we provide the adopted budget summary as a default, and then post the org unit detail and the program detail online for viewing. But we can also provide printed copies for both of those books by request. Both of those books are much larger. So as I was explaining, our budget goes from high level and then it goes into more and more details. So both the org unit and the program detail actually provides you additional details in the line item format rather than the revenue expenditure category format. That really goes into, like, if you're really interested to say, okay, what's all under the tax revenues? If that's the org unit detail, and the program detail will give you property taxes, transient lodging taxes, marijuana taxes that we get from the state. All of those different line items are illustrated in there. So I would say that by request, we can provide printed copies, but we don't usually provide those by default because those goes up to 800 and 1,000 pages for each one of those books.
So I was just asking a leading question so that you could share with the budget committee as part of orientation what the relationship was between those 3. That's all.
Thank you so much, Harrington.
Commissioner Harrington, I have to make sort of an apology. I've kind of been under the weather. I had a substantial back operation 4 weeks ago and had a heart attack when I was in the hospital. So I have not been doing a whole lot of anything for the last 4 weeks. So I hardly even attend any kind of a meeting. Yours is about the longest one I've attended here for a while. So I apologize for not being up to date on things, but I thought I still would ask the question on COVID. So
that's quite all right, Ray. It was a perfectly valid question. No need to apologize at all. We're thrilled that you had the appropriate care that you needed, and really pleased that you were able to join us tonight. So I hope you're on a good path to mend and good health. Thank you, Ray. I'm
getting there.
Jack, this is Roy. I'll have maybe 3 or 4 little questions, and it may not be pertinent to everybody, but I'm particularly interested in our unappropriated ending fund balances and our contingencies balances. What you're budgeting in there and what the philosophy is in those areas, because that's important. This committee is only looking at 1 year, but I'm looking at 2 or 3 and seeing, where we're going with those. It would be really nice if you could highlight changes in FTE and changes in programs. That's easy to spot, because if somebody was doing a comparison between 2 years, if you highlight what changed, for instance, we had something new, then they can take a look and see whether they like that or not like that, or what their comments might be. David asked a really interesting question, which I think is a pertinent one. He was talking about benefits, how our particular investments benefit. There's another side to that sword, and that is who pays. And so I hope, as the CEO said that they're developing that for the following year, we can also look at who's paying those costs, because taxpayers also want to know that they're receiving some benefit for their investments. And we're going to have lots of different people with lots of different ideas and lots of thoughts. But that's a very good question he asked. But let's look at both sides of that so that we can fairly present what those numbers look like.
Thank you, Commissioner Roger. We'll definitely take note of that. All right. Cesar, go ahead.
Hi. Okay. So I guess what I want to know is, like, what are more productive questions, or like what type of questions are more helpful? Because I feel like I could have lots of questions, right? But I feel like, does that make sense? And I feel like I don't know how to word it, right? But I don't want to just waste time at the committee asking lots of questions. Because does that make sense? Or
So honest. Oh, go ahead, Sharon.
Well, so one thing that I've learned in working with Jack over these last couple of years is there's no such thing as a dumb question. And he encourages us to formulate our questions and send them at our convenience by email so that we don't have to wait until the budget committee meeting to ask our question. So don't hesitate to send him an email with your questions at finance_budget@co.washington.or.us. And he and his team members will get back to you. And you'll be surprised how you're asking really good questions. And as Karen talked about, he and the staff team will make presentations, but by all means, we all want to learn from one another about your questions and what does it mean to be the eyes and that lens that Karen Boland talked about. So Karen, there may be something I'm missing based on your prior experience that you may want to share, and also Jack, you as well.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I echo everything that you said. There is no bad questions when it comes to the budget, and the budget committee is your full right and responsibility to really get a good understanding of the budget and then make informed decisions for the budget approval. And we stand ready.
So I would just ask Caesar, when he says, what is a good question? Are you thinking like what time to ask questions or the content of the question, or tell me more about what you're asking about?
Okay, it's just like one of my first experiences with like volunteer with government was I was a member of the Human Rights Advisory Commission for City of Beaverton.
Okay.
And just off the record, it seemed like lots of people just wasted time like just talking about their own political beliefs and their own things. And it seems like it wasn't really constructive commentary. Like it was interesting, right? But it seemed like people just started talking and just to talk.
And got off subject.
Well, yeah, no, but it seemed like, yes and no, but it was on topic, right? But it wasn't really constructive to like, there was no, like it felt like it wasn't directed to anything about the policy or things that we could do. So I guess I want to know is like how to formulate questions that are constructive and that will actually lead to something that will help, with the budget, opposed to just me just talking about my opinions on something.
Okay, good. That's very helpful. So Jack, do you want to respond?
Well, and also, I think was last year Jennifer's first year or maybe her second year. She can share with you. Feel free to pipe in, Jennifer, to help Caesar get more comfortable with what's it like as a new member of the full budget committee.
Yeah, it's I don't know if I'm the best person to speak with that, just because I do work in government finance on a regular basis, and especially with, I guess I can give you some insight. I work for the Portland Police Bureau, and as we know, there's a lot that's, going on with law enforcement, and different people are, have different ideas on how they want things, and things can get pretty political. But what I do like about the county's budget process is mostly they're sticking to the numbers. So I haven't felt that there's a lot of politics behind it. And I feel like that's maybe where you're coming from. And I definitely appreciate that about the county's level, their level in the government. They're pretty much, here for, what the community members are asking for with the budget. That's why they do sessions like this. And, like I said, I think a lot of us are just really comfortable because it's numbers. It's, you're adding and subtracting. I mean, that's literally kind of what's happening. And you're, deciding, hey, where do we want to put our resources? And, a lot of us are all kind of like-minded. We all, love Washington County and live here currently and all that good stuff. So I think you're going to have, like Jack said, there's no bad questions, but I think, it's just going to be a good experience overall. And like Karen pointed out, you'll be able to be an advocate, kind of for, your community where you live and be able to answer those questions for, people that are like, hey, what's happening with my tax dollars? What about this program? What about this program? Have that kind of knowledge to speak about it intelligently and, without any biases, because it is what it is. Good thing with numbers.
Thank you. But that's kind of the reason why I bring it up, because like law enforcement is one of the reasons why I applied for both committees of this one in Beaverton. But I want to wait to bring it up without like starting a political fight. But it's good to hear that at Washington County, you guys look at the numbers opposed to.
Yeah, and we're a very collaborative and a supportive budget committee by my short experience at Washington County. And, always we, as a local government, our number one priority is to provide services to the community where the community needs it. So with that common goal, I have not witnessed, quote unquote fight or intense disagreement, but usually folks ask very good questions. That still doesn't not necessarily mean that everybody has to agree with each other. There are different of opinions can always be brought up, and that's what the committee is meant to be. And then, but as long as we stay very respectful of each other's opinions and then communicate in an effective way, that's something that you shouldn't have to worry about. And from a scope perspective, thank you, Cesar. And from a scope perspective, I want to say you ask a really good question and make me question myself to say, okay, do we have a scope control during the budget committee meetings? And then we never really talk about it, but there is an underlying scope control. Is when you ask a question that I'm not able to answer, which gets into the programmatic areas, like, why is a certain traffic light kind of red longer than green, or why is a certain crosswalks that's wider or narrower. I think the natural scope control will come out of me to say, that's not a question that's suitable for the budget committee, and we'll help you find the right forum to discuss that matter. So I think there is a natural scope control in the budget committee meetings as well.
Okay.
All right. Well, this is a really open discussion time. It's really time for you guys to get to know each other, kind of ask any questions, and I'll do a last call for questions to see if there's any standing questions. Oh, go ahead, Chair Harrington.
So before we start all those budget committee meetings, I hope you'll let us know if we get to use the chat feature or not use a chat feature, because some meetings have a chat, and so then the Q&A gets really intense there. And what does that mean? So you don't need to answer that for me today, but just as a budget committee member, when we have that meeting, that's a ground rule that I need you to inform me about.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. And I do have an answer for you today, and that's to our plan is to follow strictly the Board of Commissioners work session and the board meeting protocols. So that means the chat feature will be disabled during the meeting.
Because we've never done a budget committee set of meetings by Zoom before, so.
Yeah, you're right. We did a bit of hybrid last year where we had certain folks that's in the room, certain folks chiming in Zoom. But we do follow the best practice that's already set forth with the Board of Commissioner meetings. So that's what we model after. All right, last call for questions or comments or excitement expressions. I personally feel very excited to work with all of you on this year's budget, and I actually feel honored this will be my third year at Washington County to be a part of the budget process. So thank you very much for the opportunity. And
survival of the fittest.
Thank you. I would love to give the last word to our county administrator, Tanya, to close out the meeting.
Thanks for the orientation, Jack.
Did a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Jack, I wasn't anticipating this. I think we're all grateful for your leadership and your fiscal management skills being our CFO. So with that, I hope everyone can maybe enjoy some rays of sunshine outside. I know I'm looking forward to going outside because I've been at this desk all day. So.
What?
That's what we do. You probably
that so you can walk around outside and just listen in.
Karen, it's
Bye,
budget time.
everybody.
I know.
See you in a couple of weeks.
See you in a couple of weeks. Great job.
Bye.
Here for
Enjoy
this.
some
everyone.
ice
Thank
cream.
you.
Bye.
Bye.